What's up, everybody? Welcome to the video. We're going short track racing under the lights this weekend for the first time in the Cup Series over at Iowa Speedway for the Iowa Corn 350. And I would absolutely love to sit here and tell you this is going to be an exciting race, an exciting event, because it's the first time we have been here, but we know how bad the short flat track racing has been in the next gen era. Probably going to be very, very difficult to pass. Also repave the corners, which you're pretty much stuck in one lane, and that's going to be unfortunate. The one bright side, but also scary thing, is that we saw a lot of tire failures in practice, so that might add some chaos into it and randomness. That's never the most fun thing for trying to bet or play DFS on it. But nonetheless, we're going to play it anyway, so we might as well try to navigate through it. But this happens to be your first time here. What's up? My name is Pennell. I break down NASCAR DFS each and every single week on this channel. Videos on Saturdays, live streams on Sundays, with this being a night race starting at 7 p.m. Eastern. Planning on around 5 p.m. Eastern for the live stream, so hopefully I'll see you all there. And really quick, I give a shout out to last week's comment contest winner, which was Steven Nadeau. I think I said that name right. But you did not get back to me yet, but he was the closest to getting the answer correctly, which was Chris Buescher at 71.6 fantasy points. So if you're watching this, reach out to me somehow. I'd like to get you your stuff. But if you want to enter this weekend, all you got to do is comment down below who you think is going to lead the most laps and how many, and the winner will get a cash prize. If you do enjoy today's video, make sure you leave a like down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new, and let's dive right into it. All right, so select some strategy here for Iowa. I don't think it's going to be anything too crazy. Probably a similar strategy to how we would build for like a New Hampshire or a Phoenix, Richmond type race, because it's a shorter flat track. It's right around like 0.9 miles in length, obviously short and flat. So we can kind of group those types of tracks together. We have 350 laps, so down points are obviously going to be pretty important, more than intermediate, but less than, say, like a Richmond or Bristol. But obviously, you're going to want at least 2 dominators per lineup this weekend. And just based off of green flag speed performance and the next gen car, it's kind of the same guys you see up front at these shorter flat tracks. Now, Kevin Harvick used to be an absolute dog at these, so when you remove him, it kind of opens it up a little bit, obviously, this season. But green flag speed-wise, it's been Ryan Blaney, Kyle Larson, Bell, Hamlin, Logano, Byron Elliott, Truex as far as green flag speed performance. We're looking at similar tracks specifically to the ones that I want to compare to Iowa. You're looking at Bell, Truex, Larson, Byron, Blaney, Logano, and obviously Christopher Bell has been absolutely insane at these types of tracks. He was super fast in practice, but obviously he hit the wall due to a tire failure. He'll be starting in the rear no matter how he qualifies here in a little bit. So just keep that in mind. But he has been absolutely incredible at these track types so far this year. Had a cheat car at Phoenix. Obviously was really good at Richmond, and then not last week, it was a couple weeks ago at Gateway, had the best car in the field by far that just ended up having an issue at the very end. So we'll see what the backup car looks like, but man, he was extremely fast in practice. And speaking of, we did get a long practice session on Friday, just about an hour. Had a couple of cautions, obviously, due to the tire issues, but just going over some of the data here, we do have the overall lap averages, but if we're looking at the lap by lap data, I tried to remove the noisy laps, the ones where, like, if we're running an average of, say, 23, 24, and a guy throws out a 35 or 70, just delete those, because obviously that's not a good representation of their actual speed. So if you do that, I did my best. I might have missed a couple, but looks like Christopher Bell had by far the best car, although obviously he has to get a new car. But then Ross Chastain, Alex Bowman, Tyler Reddick, Gregson Hamlin, Wallace, Blaney, Larson, and Chase Elliott will round out your top 10 overall lap speed. Now, this is not an exact science. This is obviously not going to be the running order through the race, but these are the guys that showed the most speed on Friday. Obviously, having an entire day, you can make adjustments, game plan for that. So keep in mind, obviously, qualifying is going to be very huge because track position will be extremely important at a track like this, where I think passing is going to be at an absolute minimal. So things to keep in mind, but just overall speed-wise on Friday, that's who was popping. And finally, moving on to the driver-by-driver breakdown, I do have to mention one thing first, and that is, of course, if you want to join the best NASCAR DFS community out there, link is down below in the description or the pinned comment for the Patreon. Projections for both sites, my entire NASCAR model, which I do show more than I give you guys over on YouTube, the entire betting model, my articles going over cash games, tournaments, bets, the optimizer, ownership projections, sim scores, Discord community. I do cover Xfinity and trucks for projections and baseball every single day in a similar fashion. So if you want to come in and check it out, love to have you. Link can be found down below. And as you all know, I'm a partner of Stochastic, and they launched a NASCAR Sims tool this year, plus other sports as well. And if you need help give yourself an edge on Sundays, you can use their contest generator or their pre-contest simulator to see which drivers show the best ROI before the race happens, or which lineups stack up the best in tournaments. You can upload your own, use mine, or use the custom ones already set up on the site. And it's a great way to help give yourself some leverage on Sundays. All right, so qualifying just ended a few moments ago. So this is one of my first time running through the entire slate with you guys. So just first initial reactions here. The more updated stuff will be on the Patreon later tonight in the live stream tomorrow evening. I do want to mention that track conditions are probably going to be a bit different tomorrow evening. I believe it's going to be close to 85, 90 degrees, and they were qualifying around like 70, 75 degrees. Also rained right beforehand, so I don't know if that's going to mean anything or not. Just thought I would pass that information by. But let's start up with the 5-figure range first. We have Kyle Larson, the lone 11K driver, but he's going to be the pole sitter. Stole the pole from Ryan Blaney at the buzzer. Thought we'd get a Blaney pole week, but fortunately was not the case. But Kyle Larson's in a prime spot to lead some laps and dominate here. We know the pole sitter is probably going to be in a pretty good spot to lead some laps here at Iowa because passing will be at a minimal. And he was pretty fast in practice as well. So you had a fast car in Q, fast car in practice, and fast at similar tracks. Really nothing not to like here about Kyle Larson. So if you are playing cash games, I would say he's in a very good spot to get you those dominator points to give you a nice cushion. So I do like Kyle Larson in really any format this weekend. Christopher Bell at $10,800. Going into the week, it looked like he would be the car to beat. He was the fastest overall car in practice if you're looking at the overall lap times, removing some of the noisy laps. And he was fast in practice too if you're looking at the consecutive lap averages of 6 in the 10 lap, 6 in the 15. Problem with him is that he's in a backup car, so he's going to be going to the rear, and passing is going to be very difficult. So we don't get that qualifying spot in the 30s where these other guys can at least get you the PD points. Bell is not going to offer you that, so I probably won't have much of him. Denny Hamlin starting in 12th. Like, why play Bell when I can just play Hamlin starting in 12th, who also had a very fast car? I mean, I think Bell had the best car overall, but obviously that's kind of gone now. He should still be fast. He posted a top 10 Q spot in his backup car. So they still have speed, obviously, but starting in the rear and not getting scored for the rear is definitely going to be a hindrance. But Denny Hamlin, he is fast everywhere. He is fast at short flat tracks. He was fast in practice, 4th in the 10 lap and 4th in the 15. And if you're looking at similar tracks this year, not quite Christopher Bell numbers, but pretty darn close to it. Good dominator points, and I don't see a reason why Hamlin can't be a contender at some point. So I would say he's a nice tournament pivot off of Kyle Larson, because I have not yet run projection or anything like that, so I don't know exactly what roster construction is going to look like, but I have to assume that Kyle Larson will be the highest owned of this range. Then William Byron, he's another pivot off of Larson, although it looks like his car is going to be a bit slower, so I think it's just going to be easier for me to get to Larson because the dominator upside is a little bit higher, and he's also performed better than William Byron at these types of tracks this year. Dropping down to the 9K range, I think Blaney and Byron are very similar plays, but you can get a slight discount with Blaney here, $200 cheaper, but $1,000 more expensive over on FanDuel. But he's got decent track position. He's obviously in a range where he can dominate or just kind of run in the top 3 and steal fast laps, kind of similar to like Gateway for a period of time. Looking at the overall lap averages for him, it does not look that great. 14th in the 5, 28th in the 10, and 27th in the 15. But if we look at the overall lap data here, Ryan Blaney's top 10 in that, only behind guys like Wallace, Hamlin, Gregson, Reddick, Bowman, Chastain, and Bell, and we have William Byron all the way littered down here. So practice was kind of weird. Not sure exactly how much I want to put into it, but I do think Blaney's obviously faster than the practice times would indicate, and these types of tracks are his bread and butter. If you're looking at this 15 race sample size for him, he's got, I believe, the best average finish, or maybe the second best, only behind Kyle Larson, and that's only by 0.1. 6 top 5s, 9 top 10s, and some over the overall best times and the second most fast laps. So he has definitely been a contender, and I think he will be in this race. Martin Truex Jr., he announced his retirement. Going to be sad to see him go, and he definitely didn't bring some speed this weekend, that is for sure. 31st in qualifying, and honestly, just based off practice, that's not too surprising. He's one of the guys that had practice kind of set it right up with his qualifying efforts. 33rd, 32nd, 32nd, 25th, and 15th, and I believe only 15 guys ran the 20-lap run there, so he was the slowest amongst that group. And if we're looking at the overall lap times, Truex is still pretty far down here. He's not quite like dead last, but obviously not that great. So while I think the starting position is going to keep him popular, I'd be very careful of your ownership to him, because there's a very strong chance that he just does not have a good car this weekend, and he's just stuck in the back and working his way in traffic. The entire day never gets up there unless he can somehow make it work on some pit strategy or something like that. But just speed-wise alone, I don't think he's going to be much of a threat. So this could be a decent spot to be underweight if he does end up being quite chalky, which I could certainly see that happening. Joey Logano, $9,300. Like, Logano is an excellent pivot option off of Truex, so is Ryan Blaney. Like, all these guys starting up front are going to be decent pivot options off a guy like Truex, who just really isn't showing much speed whatsoever. Logano, obviously, practice wasn't amazing for him, but he's definitely faster than Truex, and he's got track position to work with, 9th in the 10 lap. And if we're pulling up overall lap times, Logano wasn't that great either, so I'm not exactly sure if I'm going to have a ton of Joey. This is a track that I think would suit him decently. If we're looking at 3-race sample size, this year at the tracks I want to look at, which would be Gateway, Richmond, and Phoenix. We have Logano Sport in a 13.9 running position, but also has 2 top 5s and 2 top 10s. So I think Joey is fine in tournaments. Definitely will be lower on than Truex, I would imagine. Brett Keselowski kind of in a similar spot, although on FanDuel you get a $2,000 discount pretty much on all of these drivers. So I think he's going to be a better play over there. But in this sample size, he has an average finish of 5th, running position of 11.3. He's been in the top 10 each and every single time. He did do the tire test here as well, and so did Christopher Bell and Kyle Larson, so that's going to be an advantage. And with him having track position here, he's just one of those guys that I think could run top 5, top 8 the majority of the day, steal fast laps, and if he just gets a good finish, he'll be a good tournament play if some of these place differential guys can't get there. Because if we're looking at Ty Gibbs right below him for $200 cheaper, yes, I think he is a better cash play. You know, Ty Gibbs has been pretty strong at these track types. Average finish of 10th, running position of 11.5. He's in a JGR ride. He starts 22 spots further back. But like Truex, if he just gets kind of stuck in traffic back there majority of the day and he just kind of finishes like 15th to 20th, somewhere around there, but we have Keselowski getting a handful of fast laps and finishing in the top 10, that's a situation where you might want to have Keselowski at the lower ownership in tournaments. That's something to keep in mind. Obviously, Ty Gibbs is a fine cash play. I prefer Ty Gibbs over Martin Truex if I had to pick between them. $500 discount, and it looks like he just had faster practice speeds. Overall, I believe Ty Gibbs was borderline top 10 here, so definitely a lot faster than his Martin Truex Jr., which is more appealing there. So if I had to pick between the two, I would go with Ty Gibbs. Dropping down to the 8K range, Tyler Reddick I think is a decent play this weekend. He's going to be starting in 8th. He'll be a fine tournament play. Like similar to Keselowski, Blaney, Logano, just based off of where they're starting, they might just have lower ownership, but they have the track position and faster cars to work with. And Tyler Reddick was one of the fastest cars overall, top 5 in the overall lap data here. And if we're looking at consecutive laps, he was first in the 10 and first in the 15 lap runs. And at the short flat tracks of the data set that I'm looking at, which is Gateway, Richmond, and Phoenix, overall pretty strong numbers. He's been in the top 10 each and every single time. We have some dominator points mixed in, so I don't think Reddick's a bad play. Only $800 could be a second level dominator. Chase Elliott kind of in that same category for me. He'll be starting in 9th, decent car, 5th, 6th, 12th, 20th, and the 15. But if we're looking at the overall laps here, I believe Elliott was top 10, so he's got a decent car. He's got track position. I could just see him running top 10 all day, and if he gets fast laps and finishes up there, and if the place differential guys don't get there, that's where it works out in tournaments. Although I do think Reddick has better dominator potential over Chase Elliott this weekend. Buescher and Chastain kind of viewing them as very similar plays. Keselowski had some speed, so I'm sure that Chris Buescher and Keselowski will finish somewhat similar here, although it looks like Keselowski will be slightly better. Ross Chastain, decent speed, 6th, 2nd, 13th, 15th. Tournament plays only for me, but I believe Chastain had some of the best speed in practice overall. Yeah, he was P2 overall if you're looking at the lap data here, and I believe that Chris Buescher was a little bit further down. Yeah, actually one of the worst cars, but they qualified decent, and I think RFK tends to figure it out. But I guess if I had to pick between the two, I would go with Ross just based off of speed alone. Kyle Busch, he'll be starting in 7th. Just kind of sucks at these track types. I don't really trust him here, so I don't see myself playing him. Very sample size of similar tracks, 21.5 running position, 25th in the average finish. And they always seem to have issues on pit road, whatever it may be, whether it's Kyle's fault or the pit crew, or he just tends to spin a lot on the track. Don't think I'm going to have a lot of interest there, especially when I can play Bowman, who had one of the fastest cars in practice. Obviously, qualifying poorly, it's going to hurt his overall projected finish just because, it's going to be hard to work through that traffic. Passing will be extremely difficult. But we're getting a Hendrick car at AK, who was just overall one of the fastest cars on Friday's session, starting all the way back in 33rd. He should be able to move up, so he's a fine cash play here. Josh Berry kicking us off in the 7K range. He'll be starting in 3rd. Going to be very tough to get there. Only a large field tournament play for me. We know this is a track that Josh Berry can do well here. He's a good short, flat track kind of guy. Looking at practice times, a little bit lower down here. Obviously, actually very low. Down here with Kyle Busch, Shane Smith, Todd Gilliland. So I don't think Josh Berry will be able to hold his ground. I think maybe stage 1, if this strings out, yeah, he'll be fine. But I think he just fades back. Then we have Bubba in 16th. I feel like I'd rather just play Bubba Wallace or like a Josh Berry type. He's kind of the same play as Buescher and Ross Chastain, but we get a bit of a discount here. And he was top 10 in the overall lap data. So I think Bubba's fine. If you're looking at lap averages, 12th, 11th, and 4th. So I'm okay with some Bubba Wallace in tournaments. I believe Austin Cindric's going to the rear, so I'm probably just going to have to pass on him. Obviously didn't have the best overall second lap averages either. Chase Briscoe, decent speed. This is the track that Briscoe could do well. Short flat tracks are really the only place I would ever play him. The problem is just starting so far up, similar to Josh Berry. I think it's likely he moves back, but he will be in the turnip pool because this is the track that he can excel at. But again, starting in 6, if we're looking at similar tracks this year, he has 3 top 20s, which is great, but only 1 top 10, and you pretty much need a top 10 out of him, borderline top 8 with some fast laps, which based off of practice speeds, he might be able to do. But in the overall lap data, he was slower than that, like fringe top 15. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. Michael McDowell starting in 22nd. This is just such an awkward range overall because I'm not really sure how much we can even get to this 7K range, because if we're playing 2 to 3 drivers from 9K and up, and this 8K range looks pretty good too. Some of these guys have race winning upside or can steal fast laps and be contenders, and you have Bowman starting in 33rd, who I assume will be pretty chalky. So how much of the 7K range can you actually get to? So these are all more so dart throws, really. Like Suarez showed a lot of speed starting in 13th, but he's a tough guy to trust as well. Noah Gragson kicking off this 6K range. He'll be starting in 23rd. I do think he's someone we can get to. We have some PD upside, and it looks like he's got a decently fast car. Did mess up one of his qualifying laps, or I think he would end up finishing starting a little bit higher. So I think he should be able to move up here. First in the 1 lap, first in the 5, and then obviously this 10 and 15 lap turn into 30th and 24th. But I'm just not really sure how much we need to be trusting these lap averages this week, because they just kind of seem to be all across the board. And it's a little confusing, which is why I'm kind of having a tough time figuring out who exactly I want to play. But if we were looking at Noah Gragson, he is top 5 here. So Bell 1, 2, 3, yeah, he's 5th overall in this lap by lap data. So, I mean, he should be decent. I do think he's going to be in play on either site. Todd Gillen starting on 14th. I'll probably pass on that. Carson Hocevar is the same exact play every single week, although the price seems to get a little bit more expensive, but he's starting in 20th, and he'll probably be like a fringe top 20 car, so not a ton of interest there. Ryan Preece starting in 29th. His teammates have much faster Q speeds. We had Barry in 3rd, Briscoe in 6th, and Noah Gragson in 23rd. So he was lacking a little bit. Practice 26th, 25th, and 29th. He's going to be viable for me, though, because this is a track where Ryan Preece can excel. These SHR cars tend to do well these types of tracks, but if we're looking at similar tracks so far this year for Ryan Preece, running position of 20th, an average finish of right around 27th. But if he contends for a top 20 in this race, like, you're happy with that at that price point for where he's starting. Eric Jones was the absolute worst car on the track on Friday, $64. He's starting in 32nd. I don't think there's a lot of upside here. Does have a top 15 finish, but I don't think he's going to have a great car. Because if you're looking at practice, he is all the way down here at the bottom. 24.43 for the lap averages here, which is dead last. So I don't think Eric Jones should really be in consideration too much here, unless there's carnage or weird strategy. That can be where it works out, but speed alone, I don't think Eric Jones is going to offer you that this week. AJ Allmendinger, not a lot of interest here. 9th in the 1 lap, 35th and 36th in the 5 and 10 lap. Just starting a little bit too high for me. Austin Dillon, one of the worst cars on Friday and the worst car on Saturday. I don't really have much interest here. Outside of there being a lot of carnage, I mean, these are the guys that are probably going a lap down quite quickly. Same for Ricky Stenhouse. Although Stenhouse was obviously a little bit faster, didn't queue that well. But looking at his overall lap speeds, Stenhouse was a little bit higher. So if I had to pick between Jones, Austin Dillon, and Stenhouse, I think Stenhouse has the better chance of at least passing cars on speed. But I'm not expecting fireworks here. I mean, if you're starting in the rear, I mean, unless you're like a Christopher Bell, obviously the threat to go down a lap early on is there for sure. And then for this 5K range, it just looks like a lot of junk. You're really just kind of picking and praying that these guys at least just finish the race, I guess, because I don't think there's going to be anything amazing down here. There's no one that really sticks out. I could see Hunter Nemechek having ownership, starting in 34th, and he's obviously in the Xfinity race, so if he wins that, maybe that bumps his ownership a little bit. It's about to start in about 20 minutes. I don't know what's happening there. I do know he's one of the favorites for it, though. So he's going to be starting in 34th. I could see people going there. I mean, he shouldn't be like the second to third last worst car in the field. LaJoy was fast in practice. He also has the Iowa car, but starting in 24th, that's a bit high for me. And there's just really nothing that stands out here. If you want to play Justin Haley, because he's been good this year, starting in 19th, he at least showed some decent speed in the lap averages. And if we're looking at his numbers this season in similar tracks, 21.7 average finish, but the running position's been a little bit worse. Does have a top 10 to show for it. I believe that was at Gateway. Maybe, but I don't really trust any of them. Just kind of pick and pray if you end up in this range. Hopefully you can get some of these 6K drivers, like a Stenhouse if you want, but I don't really trust any of them, so just hope for the best if you get there. But with that being said, that's all I got for today's video. So I hope you enjoyed. And if you did, make sure you leave a like down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are brand new. I feel a bit confused about this slate. It's obviously a new track, and just practice is kind of throwing me for a loop once we saw qualifying. So hopefully I can get some things sorted out later tonight. And I feel a little bit better for the live stream tomorrow. But I wish you all the best. If you want to check out the Patreon, you know where to find it. Link can be found down below. I'll see y'all tomorrow, and peace.